I ain't gonna preach. I ain't gonna preach. My royal family, this is your girl Duchess Kiki. Look, I know this video is long overdue. You guys asked me on one of my lives at the beginning of last year, you asked me to do a video answering some of you guys' questions. Well, I know it ain't a whole full year yet. It's almost there. Here is your video that you guys have requested. I have a lot of videos that I'm about to be doing because of some requests from my loyal subscribers. You guys are very loyal to me and I really appreciate it. Some of you have been with me since 2007. Since I began my natural hair journey in 2007 and I started my YouTube video, you guys have been there through it all. And kudos go to you guys. So, what better way to celebrate than to answer the questions that you guys asked me on that particular video, wanting to know, you had questions about some things and different things. The questions are like different questions and I really have not written down any answers. All I have are the questions written down. And I was going through my phone tonight and I was deleting some photos, and in the photos I saw that you guys, I had took a picture of your questions and I wrote them down, but I never finished writing them down. So I did all of that tonight while I was at work, and then I decided when I got home I was going to go ahead and film this video to get it done. I love when you guys ask me questions because that lets me know that you are wanting to know more about me, and I don't mind sharing more about me at all. As you saw in my December Vlogmas videos, that I was sharing things about me that you guys had no clue about. Here we go. First question. What type of editing software do you use? I use iMovie. I am an Apple fan. I have been an Apple fan before Apple ever became popular. I have been an Apple fan since 2005. Can't remember, but I've been on YouTube for a very long time. I think I started in the early 2000s and I was using a Dell computer, and it was awful to get my videos uploaded. It was just the worst. And I used to use the Dell software at that time, and it was absolutely the worst. It took forever to get a video uploaded. It took forever to get the video. I couldn't do much editing because I wasn't that good at it, and it was just awful. So my brother was the first in our family to have an Apple product. He had an iPhone, and he taught me kept telling me I need to cross over, and then he got a MacBook, and I fell in love with the MacBook because I was in the music world, so a lot of musicians were using MacBooks, and I was like, oh man, I gotta get me one. And once I got my first Apple computer and I used iMovie, I know some people don't like iMovie, but once I used it, I fell in love with it, and I learned how to edit, I learned how to do all that stuff in it, and that's how I began to basically use iMovie. Some people use other things, but iMovie is something that I love to use. I actually got an Apple MacBook. Was my first Apple product before I ever got an iPhone. I had an Apple computer and I had an Android phone, like a Samsung Android. I know, crazy, right? Eventually I upgraded to an iPhone with the iPhone 4. I think that was the first one I got. I am a huge Apple fan. You know, I've been an Apple fan. When Steve Jobs passed away, y'all, I cried. Like, I was literally sad because I remember him from the beginning. I remember him from the start of me loving Apple before it became, quote, so popular. So I got my first MacBook in 2005, and ever since then, I've never turned back. I will never get another computer other than an Apple. Will you touch up your sister locks when new growth starts? Of course, y'all, this was last year. At the beginning of last year, this was asked to me. The question is, and I'm sure you've seen all of my videos by now, which I will have a new 14-month video coming soon for January. Yes, I definitely retighten once my hair starts new growth. I wait about 6 to 8 weeks before I retighten. I'm trying to push it out farther now, now that I'm a year locked. So I'm trying to push it out a little bit more. I think I can go a little bit more. It's just going to take me longer to retighten. So that is a definite yes. I will, when my new growth grows out to a certain amount, yes, I will retighten, and that retightening will be between, lately I've been doing between 6 to 8 weeks. So I have not been able to get my 5 weeks in at all. So it's been about 6 to 8 weeks. So yes. One other subscriber asked me what inspired me to begin making jewelry, is the question. I'm going to try to make this answer very brief. Y'all, I started making jewelry. Okay, first let me explain. I grew up in a very strict home and a very religious home. And my mother would not allow me to do certain things. And there were certain things that my mother would not allow me to do, and one of them was to get my ears pierced. I was not allowed to wear makeup. I wasn't allowed to get my ears. I was not allowed to get my ears pierced. It was a straight up no. Every time I asked, I had been asking since I was like 7 or 8 years old. My mom kept saying no. Every year I asked again, my mom kept saying no. For my birthday, I remember blowing out candles and saying, Lord, please, for my wish. You know how you do your birthday wish? And one of my wishes was, I kept saying every year, Lord, please let my mom let me get my ears pierced. And I prayed and I prayed and I cried and I prayed and I cried. So when I turned 16 years old, the answer still was no, from the age 7 all the way up to 16. Well, my aunt and my mom, my mom's middle sister, she's the middle child, and she didn't have any kids, and I was the only grandchild. And well, I wasn't the only grandchild when I was 16. I was the first grandchild, so I was close to all of them, and I was the only girl. And my aunt picked me up on my birthday, my 16th birthday. I had been begging and crying for years for my ears to get pierced. My aunt came and picked me up, saying she was going to take me out for my birthday. My aunt kindly took me, I think she picked me up from school early that day or something like that. My aunt took me to this place called New York, New York in Virginia. And my aunt got my ears pierced. My aunt paid for me to get my ears pierced. She could not understand why my mother would not let me get my ears pierced. Of course, when I got home, my mom flipped out. Her and my aunt had this huge argument, and I didn't care because I finally got my ears pierced. So I got my ears pierced at the age of 16. Well, of course, I always have been a child that was into jewelry. I was a girl, when I was growing up, y'all, I had bracelets all the way up my arm. Like, I had them, like, all this was covered with bracelets, like, when I was a little girl. Because I wasn't able to wear earrings, all I could do was necklaces and bracelets and rings. So I would have a ring on every finger. I would have bracelets all up my arm. I forgot all about this, y'all. I would have bracelets all up my arm, to the point where some people were like, the pastor's granddaughter is Jezebel. She looks like Jezebel. You look like Jezebel. And they were calling me Jezebel. I didn't even have my ears pierced, and they actually called me Jezebel. And I didn't care. That's how I had colorful bracelets, and I had a whole bunch of necklaces. I had no ears pierced, and I had a whole bunch of rings. I had rings on every finger. That was me. That was how I just loved jewelry. So at the age of 16, I got my ears pierced. And then my mom wouldn't let me wear big earrings. They had to be a stud. So they had to be small. And I remember one day in my room, the choir, we had to sing. My church choir had to sing that Sunday. And I was like, I want me a different pair of earrings. I don't want a pair of earrings that everybody is wearing. I literally took a pair of studs that I had, and I literally took some nail glue, y'all. And I bedazzled them things up. I wish I still had them, y'all. I literally bedazzled those earrings to the point that people were like, "Oh, they are cute." It was like little pearls. Like, y'all should have saw. I just took nail glue. I took nail glue because I was wearing I could wear false nails. I was wearing false nails, but I couldn't wear, you know, I had acrylic nails, but I couldn't have my ears pierced. So I wore them that Sunday. Everybody was like, they are so cute. And because it looked like there was more than one earring, my grandmother was like, you look like you have on more than one earring. I was like, Grandma, they're little. They're not big. They were probably this big, y'all. This big. And my grandmother had a fit, but I kept wearing them, and I made them, and people were like, I like those, girl. And I was like, I made them. So I started making jewelry at the age of 16. I was 16 years old, and then the jewelry, beaded jewelry came out later, and I dabbed into that, and I tapped into that really hard with the wire and the beaded jewelry. And once I tapped into that, and that was when I was 18 that came out. And once that came out, I was in college then. I went crazy. I would come and I would go, when I would come to like different bead stores in the area when I would come home from college, and I would stock up, and I would go back to school, make jewelry. I made jewelry at home on the weekends when I literally, well, that was it when I wasn't doing hair, but I literally made jewelry. And then people were like, make me some. My aunt was like, I'm gonna buy some from you. The aunt that took me to get my ears pierced, and my other aunt was like, I'm gonna buy some. So they started buying jewelry from me, and that's how my jewelry business literally started. Because at the age of 16, I started creating different pieces just for myself, and then I started making jewelry to sell between 17 and 18 years old. 27 years, y'all. 27 years. No, I wanted to take jewelry classes, but I never went to sign up for one, and I didn't have the money to like pay for one at the time. I was working part-time and doing hair and going to college and doing all this at the same time. So I did not ever take a class. Anything that I would envision in my mind jewelry wise, like I did for that first pair of earrings that I created with nail glue, I went ahead and just started making it from there. Most of my jewelry that I make are my designs. There are some pieces that I do you know, use of others, and whenever I see someone else's and I use theirs, I do give them credit for their earring that they've made, that I've made like there. I do give them credit because it's not mine. It's not my design, and I've never tried to steal anybody's design. I've never tried to do a video on somebody else's design. I've never done any of that. All I do is, like, if I'm doing a design and it's off of another person, I give them credit, and that's just me. I just do that. So yeah, but when it's my own design, I let you know it's my own design, trademark and stuff, and don't steal it. It's pretty much is what I'm like. Don't steal my design. But yeah, it's like things that will come in my head, especially when I'm thinking of different pieces to make or different things to make throughout the years. I just went ahead and designed it and went about it that way. So I still have some of my very first pieces of my beaded wire jewelry from 1996, 95, 94, 93. From 1993, I still have some of those pieces, and they're real gold, so they have not changed colors. And maybe I can do a video on those one day. My aunt wants me to go back to making that kind of jewelry, but I'm like, that's not even my style anymore. Like, I'm totally in another whole era now. Like, I'm in another whole place with the jewelry business. So that will not happen. How do I know which business event to take? My son is, I consider him as my co-owner of my company with me. When I see an event, or if an event is presented to me, I first pray about it. After praying about it, I then talk it over with my son. I talk it over with my son. We then make a mutual decision. We look at the overall picture. Is it going to benefit us? Is it not? How much are we spending for the event? How much do you think we're going to make? Believe it or not, one of the questions that we ask each other is, one of the main questions we ask is it an all-black event? I don't like doing all-black events because that's not where I make my money. A lot of people that are not of color buy my items. A lot of Korean, Caucasians, any other race other than black are usually the main people that come to my table and purchase. And they don't purchase just a little bit, they purchase a lot. So they're like my main business. They're my main customers. I mean, that's just how it is. They're my main customers. So when it comes to trying to decide if we're going to do that event, one of our main questions is it an all-black event or is it a multicultural event? We rather do multicultural events because that's where we make our money. When we do an all-black event, we lose so much money to the point that I don't even make my money back for my vendor, for my table, for my space. So that is something that's one of our main questions that we ask, because we know what works for my business. We know what works for Designs by Duchess. We already know what works. We've done it for a long time. Trial and error is what took place. So that is definitely one part of how we decide. There were some events during 2018 that we did turn down for the simple fact that it was an all-black event. And that's just, and y'all, please don't take it the wrong way. Y'all, please don't take it the wrong way. It's just we've learned who our clientele is. We've learned who our clients are. We've learned, in the area that I live in, we've learned our clientele. So with us knowing our clientele, we try to stick more towards that. Not saying I won't do an all-black event, because I did do an all-black event, which was in the summer. I did one all-black event. Actually, I did two all-black events, and they were both a success. One was actually in Richmond, Virginia, and it was a huge success. So those were cases where it was a huge success. But if normally we usually take a gamble when we take an event that's not multicultural. I'm a person, I want my jewelry worn by everyone. I don't want it just worn by one group of people. So, or one age group. Another thing that we look at is we look at the fact of how much is this table going to cost us? What do we think we're going to earn from this? We try to pre-calculate it before we get there. What do we think we're going to make? What is our goal? We set a goal of what we want to make while we're there. One of the main decisions we basically, my son and I talk things over before, because he goes to every event with me. First, I got to make sure he can get off. He's got to make sure he can get off. He's got to make sure he's there, because he's my helper and I can't do this alone. So by him being my helper, and I pay him for helping me that day, so he gets a salary for helping me. That's something that he does. You know, he's the one that set up the table. He do a better job at setting up the table than I do, y'all. So he's the one that set up my table. He's the one that do all of that for me. And we've done so many events now that we have a system. So we know what he's gonna put up. We know what I'm gonna put up. We know what he's gonna do. We know what I'm gonna do. We know so we have this down pat, and it's a blessing. I don't know what I'm gonna do when he leaves to go to college, but it is totally a blessing that he helps me with these events. And I might have to just hire my nephew or something like that to help me in the future, but when he goes to college. But yeah, It's something that when an event is presented to us, I message him, we pray about it, I pray to God, we decide, we discuss it, we have like a business meeting type thing once I get home to discuss it, to discuss the pros and the cons, and then we make our decision that we're going to do that event. Once we both agree that we're going to do that event, I then go ahead and send in the money to the event and lock it in. So that's how we manage and how we handle deciding on events. This question was asked twice by two different people. I think it was by two different people. This question was, how did I raise my son on my own? And the other one was, how do you raise your son as a single mom? I kind of put those into the same category because I'm on my own and single mom. So these I'm going to answer together and sum it all up into one. When my son was born, his father and I was still together. My son's father and I broke up when my son was 14 months old. Being that my son was 14 months old, he was very little when we broke up. Not only did we break up at 14 months, when my son was 14 months old, when my son turned 2 years old, we actually moved from Richmond, Virginia, back home to where my family is. The Lord told me it was time to go back home. My grandparents were getting old, and the Lord told me to go back to be with my family because my grandparents needed me. During the time of the breakup, which was September of that year, during the time of the breakup and the time that I moved back home, the Lord, I rededicated my life back to Christ. I rededicated my life back to Christ, and I was in my room one night in Richmond, Virginia, and rededicated my life back to God. And once I rededicated my life back to God, I started allowing God to run everything in my life. And what happened is, once I moved back that next year, I moved back home. And my family was overjoyed because I had always said I never will move back here. I lived in Richmond for 10 years, y'all. 10 years. Left straight out of high school and moved to Richmond and lived there for 10 years. And I always said I will never move back. And when I moved back, my family was excited. So I lived with my grandparents. I had money set aside and everything for the move. And when my grandparents... the court okayed everything. I had already gotten full custody of my son before I moved home. His father and I were going back and forth to court for like a year, which I've done a video on that in the past. And I got full custody of my son right off the bat. I got full custody, moved home, got permission from the court. The judge okayed everything for me to move back home. Moved back here and stayed with my grandparents from August of that year until December of that year. So that was 4 months, almost 5. My grandparents did not want me to leave. My grandparents was like, you can go, basically you can go, but can the baby stay here? I was like, no, my baby can't stay. I was like, no, my baby can't stay here. I was like, Grandma, no. They wanted to keep the baby. They wanted to raise my son. And I was like, Grandma, Granddaddy, I was like, no. I was like, you know, I am the one that had my child out of wedlock. I'm the one that, and I don't call him a mistake because he was meant to be here. I was like, I was the one that messed up and did this. I'm the one that's got to take responsibility for my own child. And I don't think my son would have had that because he loved my grandparents, but my son is a mama's boy and he loves his mom. And I was like, yeah, no. So because I had got approved for my apartment, I had gotten a full-time job, I was getting back on my feet because I couldn't stay there forever, Grandma and Granddaddy house. So I ended up moving a whole 2 cities away from them. And once I did that, it was on. Like, it was it was getting my son into good daycare. That was one of the things that I did. You asked me, how did I raise it? How did I do it? First of all, God was the one that helped me raise him. It was nobody but God. I raised my son all of his life as a single mom, except 1 year. And when I tell you, it was a lot of praying. It was a lot of fasting. It was a lot of just laying before God. It was a lot of everything with God. This is almost bringing tears to my eyes. I hope I don't cry. People look at my son now, and I'm sorry, y'all. They look at my son and they congratulate me on how he's a good child and how good he is. A lot of them don't know the nights that I cried. I made it look easy. I always said I made me messing up and having a child out of wedlock look easy. It wasn't easy, y'all. It wasn't easy at all. But I knew that I wanted the best for my child. And I knew, and I always say that God allowed me to have my son to get me out of the mess that I was in. Because my son, I feel like God let my son be born to save me. Because otherwise I would have still been out there doing whatever. Still living in sin. Still doing whatever. Not saying I ain't never messed up now. I ain't gonna even say I ain't never messed up doing this coming back to Christ. That ain't what happened. And y'all know about my channel is real. But it was a lot of praying. There was sometimes I didn't know what we were going to do. There was sometimes I didn't know. And I didn't have different men coming in and out my house. That was one thing I never did. Is I always promised myself my child will not grow up and be grown and say, Mama had this man and that man and this man and that man running through our house. Never. Out of my son's 17 years, he's only seen one boyfriend. And that was the guy I dated 5 years ago. One boyfriend. One. And he didn't meet him right off the bat. It took almost a year before he met him. So, and I didn't allow him to come to my house. So, it was a lot of praying. I mean, that's all I can say is how did I do it? It was God. I give God all the credit, y'all. Now, that's the spiritual form and the spiritual way of how it happened. The physical way of how it happened is God gave me wisdom. I prayed for wisdom at a very early age of having my son. I prayed for wisdom when my son was a little boy. I asked God to give me wisdom in every area of my life. Give me wisdom to raise a son. I didn't know how to raise a son. I knew that I wanted my son because I already saw as he was a little boy, I already saw how smart he was. And I tapped into that smartness. And what I did is I enrolled him not into a regular daycare where they just keeping the kids running around doing everything. That ain't what we did. I did investment into my child. And what I did is I found a daycare academy. I found a daycare academy. I enrolled my child in an academy that had a curriculum. And that is how, before my son ever entered into public school, he already knew how to read. He already knew how to write his name. He already knew how to spell. He already knew he knew his numbers. He already knew his alphabet. He already knew this stuff. For one, I started reading to him when he was in my womb. I started calling his name Malik when he was in my womb. I was already singing to him when he was in my womb. So when he came out, he was already ready, you know. And when he was a little boy, little baby, I read books to him. You think the babies don't understand? They understand. I read books to him. I talked to him. My mom always would say I treated him like he was 18. I knew what God blessed me with. And so I tapped into his smartness to help with that. So once he was in an academy, he graduated. He went to the academy for like 3 years, I want to say. He graduated from the academy, then went to public school. When he got in public school, he was so smart in kindergarten, the teacher kept sending notes home that he kept talking because he was bored. He already knew all the stuff. He already knew how to write his ABCs. He already knew everything. So that I give total credit to the school that I had put him in, which was Mariners Cove Academy, Christian Academy. And I put him in there. They had to wear uniforms every day, y'all. It was straight up legit. They were expensive, but it was worth it. Another thing that I did to help raise my son is I didn't allow him to stay with different people. I remember growing up, my mom and my dad wanted to have date night and they would just dump me on anybody. They don't know what those people would do to me at their houses. And so I promised myself that if I ever had a child, that I would never ever allow my child or dump my child on anyone. I mean, I've stayed with the majority of the people at church, the mothers, my aunt and her 7-8 kids, and I mean, y'all, I have stayed with a lot of people because my parents wanted to go out. And I don't agree with it because there's some stories that I could tell that I will not tell in this video. Maybe one day God will allow me to tell those stories, but I promised myself I would never, ever allow my child to stay anywhere. The only people I allowed my child to stay with growing up and even now, and you can say I sheltered him, I don't care because what worked for me worked. Only people I allowed my son to stay with was my mom, because my mom lived with my grandparents and I knew they weren't going to let anything happen to him. And my brother, he still had never stayed overnight with my brother. He had stayed like with my brother and my nephews, and then my brother would bring him back. But as he got older and became a teenager, then my brother would let him stay overnight with my nephews whenever he would get them. And I let my son go on a trip with my dad 1 week for vacation, and y'all, my dad and his wife, y'all, I was scared to death. I prayed so hard that week. I didn't want him to go, but I let him go because I'm a daddy's girl. So I'm a daddy's girl, so I let him go. I let him go. And that was one of the things that I did not allow to happen, was my son to stay with anybody other than those three. And then it would freak me out when he had to go with his father every other weekend. You're talking about a sister that prayed, y'all. I would pray so hard. I think I had revival every other weekend at home because I would pray. People would be like, that's the time for you to go out. That's the time for you to do your own thing. I couldn't. I was a worship leader, so all I could do was worship. All I could do was stay home and pray. I didn't allow myself to get into things that would cause me to drift away. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't strong enough as a Christian. I did sing with during that time. I did sing with a recording choir, and I also sang with a recording artist, worship artist, 2 groups at one time. That kept me busy. That kept me going out. That kept me singing out. That kept me doing those things. And that during that time is the name The Duchess. That's how she was created, because that's what they named me when I was singing with those groups. So was singing with the recording choir. So that is I then was into that, and that kept me busy for like a long time, like 10 15 years. It kept me very busy, y'all. And even when I knew God had called me to the ministry, I still kept singing. I still kept singing. But that was pretty much how I kept myself busy and kept myself out of trouble, and was praying. I prayed a lot. I worshiped a lot, you know, and I was a worship leader at my church, and so I didn't allow myself to like hang out all night and knowing I had to do worship the next day and do all that stuff. I tried to keep a clean spirit and to keep it pure, and so that when I came against the demonic spirits in front of the congregation, I knew, you know, I was ready. I was ready for battle. I had my armor on because I had been laying before the Lord. So those were the things, you know, that kept me busy while he was with his father. And then when I would get him back, I would hold him so tight, like, baby, I missed you. Baby, I missed you. And that's how I made it through those times. I didn't allow him to stay with everyone and just kept him close to me. So I guess you can say that I was like a sheltered mom. Like, I sheltered my son. I allowed him to play in sports. He played in sports for years. He played soccer, and I allowed him to do those things. I allowed him to have an open life, and be free to speak and be free to talk to me about things. That's one thing. He knows that I'm mom, but he knows that I'm mom that's here to listen too. So that is something that I always raised my son from the beginning, us to have that communication, us to be able to talk, and he can talk to me about anything. He can speak to me about anything. So I tried to have that because I didn't have that with my mom. So I wanted me and my child, I raised him total opposite of what I was raised. And that was my goal, was not to raise him the way that I was raised. Yes, I put the foundation in him. Yes, I raised him in church, but I also wanted him to know that there's a life. Like, enjoy life. We got to enjoy life. We got to live life. So that is something definitely that I did with him, is just making sure that he knew we were free. You're free to talk to me about anything. Then let him stay with a bunch of folk. Watched in church. He wasn't allowed to run around during service. He was allowed to usher, and once he was done ushering, he had to come and sit right back beside me. During service, he sat beside me. There was no running around the church. There was no doing all what these other children were doing in the church. He sat beside me, and when service was over, I allowed him to be free at that time. He can run around, do whatever. That's when he would go do all his hugging, because my son loves to hug, and he will go around hugging the saints and friends. And but during service, the main place was right there beside me. We did not have children's church. I did allow him to sing in the children's choir. So that is something that he did do. He sang in the children's choir. So he did get to spend time with the youth regarding like when they went skating or when they had parties, like Halloween, hallelujah parties for Halloween and things like that. I did allow him to do those types of things, but I was very cautious, and I was very close to him. I kept him close to me. I knew where he was at all times. There was no, I don't know where he is. And so I did that. And now people are like, how in the world are you living life and you're a single mom? I'm living life now because I already did all the raising. I did all this when he was under 10, y'all. Okay? I did all this. Now I'm free. So now he's a teenager, he's driving, he got a job, he his own man now, you know. And even now with me raising him that way, he even don't get into a lot of things now. Like, he'll take his little girlfriend out one date every now and then, but mainly he's home. He's here if he's not working, and that's the way that we live our life, and that's the way that he likes it. He likes to be home. I'll ask him, you rather want to go out, do such and such, or you want to go home? I want to go home. Okay, cool. I want to go home too. I'm just trying to do something, trying to get you out of the house. So that is something that I did at an early age. The last thing I'm going to talk about, because this is probably going to have to be a separate video about my son and how I raised him. The last thing I want to talk about that I did is I saw how smart he was. He made honor roll from the day he entered into public school until now. How that happened is when I was living in one part of Virginia, not Richmond, this is once I moved back home. And once I moved back home, I lived in one part of Virginia, and I felt like the schooling wasn't that great there. It was okay, but it wasn't that great. So I searched. At first I was tired of driving from where I lived all the way 30-40 minutes away to get to work, and then rushing to get him from daycare, and then rushing, you know, all that stuff. So what I did is I prayed really hard. Actually, I cried at the tunnel, broke down and cried, Lord, move me, please move me. So I moved. I searched. Before moving, I had to research the schools. I'm not just going to move just to move. I researched the schools in this area. I found out that they had the #1 curriculum in the entire area out of all the 7 cities in this area. Once I found that out, y'all, my child was in 3rd grade. He was in 2nd. He was getting ready to go to 3rd when I made the move that summer. As soon as he got out of the school in the other city, that city, it was okay. You know, I'm not going to say, it was, you know, I knew that he wouldn't have been able to grow as much as he has here. When we moved to the city I live in now, he was in he was going to 3rd grade, and the teachers absolutely loved him. They pushed him. They saw how smart he was, and they saw how he was not just your typical black kid. He was just, it was something different about him. And once he kept making honor roll while we were here, he got smarter and smarter, y'all. The boy is smart, okay? He got smarter and smarter, and so I kept investing into that. Then when he went to middle school, then I did a switch from one side of the city and moved to the other side of the same city. There's so many schools in this city, but the whole city schooling system was like the bomb. Like, it was just awesome. Like, it was #1. What I did is I moved to the other part of the city where I really knew that it was multicultural. You know, the city we live in is a lot of races. So, but where we're at is like a lot of multicultural. And I was like, yeah, I need to move closer to work anyway, because I'm in the city, but I'm not closer to work. So I moved closer, God worked it out where I got that apartment. That's actually the apartment we just moved from to move to this house. Stayed there for about, we stayed there for a long time, about 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years maybe. And all through elementary, finished, because 3rd grade we moved to another apartment to 4th grade. So 4th grade all the way till we moved to this side. He was here. He was on this side. Middle school, piece of cake. He was already in middle school. He was already taking classes because he was already advanced in elementary, because they had him in gifted class. I forgot to tell you. They put him in the gifted program. So he was already shown to be smart. Then we get here on this side of Virginia Beach, and he's still in the gifted program, but he's advanced. They wanted to skip him classes when we first moved here, and I said no. They wanted to skip him grades, and I said no. I want him to go with his grade and graduate with his class. So when he was in middle school, he already was taking he was already taking high school courses. He was already taking the courses that was going towards his high school diploma. So once he took the classes, he was already in 6th grade. He was in pre-algebra. He was in pre-Spanish, intro to Spanish or something. And then 7th grade, he was in flat straight out Spanish and algebra. And he was already taking that stuff. So when he got to high school in 9th grade, he already have taken Algebra 1, geometry, algebra. They made him take geometry, then he had to take algebra 2. So he already was done with all of that when he got to high school. So now we're in the case where when he was in 8th grade, I went to the guidance counselor. We mapped everything out for high school. And when we mapped everything out, actually I had went to the counselor from 5th to 6th and we mapped everything out for middle school. Then for high school, I met with the counselor and we mapped everything out, where now my son is dual enrolled. He's in college and high school at the same time. And he's in the college courses in high school, at the high school. Then he leaves high school and goes to college. And then that's his day now. He's done that for the past 2 years. And he's majoring in digital design. So he's the one that designed a lot of my stuff for my business. I don't know if I ever told you guys that. He designs my cards. He designs my things to put my earrings in. He designs my things for my necklace. He designs everything. He's my designer for the business. So he actually is doing what he loves, and that's what he wanted to do. That's what I did, is I invested time into his schooling. I invested time into his schooling. I did not just dump it on the teachers, but when he got home, when he was little, we did homework together. Even though I had to leave and go out of town that Friday and I won't be back to that Monday, we still made time. Well, I would be back Sunday usually, or Saturday night. We made the time to my mom would always keep him when I was on the road, because I traveled a lot with singing. We always came back together to work on his homework. We always focused on his homework. So I can say the first 10 years of my son's life, everything in my life revolved around him. God and him. God and him. God and him. That's how I made it. That's how I did it. Once he started getting older, and when he became a teenager, it was like, I'm done. I done sowed the seed. I done did the thing. I planted the seed in the ground. So that's how I did it. How did I handle losing my son's father at a young age? I can never remember sometimes some things, and some things I guess I just block out. I'm trying to remember if my son was 5 or 6 when his father passed. I think my son was 5 years old when his father passed away. My son's father's name was Melvin. And Melvin and I were together for 5 years before we broke up. So we had Malik towards the end of our relationship. Never did I think that he was not going to be here. Melvin was a good guy. He just let a lot of bad influences as far as friends guide his life instead of leading his own life. One thing that he used to say when we were together was that he was going to die anyway. He was going to die when he was 35. And I used to say, Melvin, don't say that. He used to say it all the time. And I used to say, don't say that. Stop saying that. Power. That's what I mean by power. From the word, the scripture, power is in your tongue. God, guys, y'all gotta be, royal family, be careful what you speak out of your mouths. Because you can speak things over you that you can do nothing about. When Melvin passed, he was 35 years old. He was 35 years old. And I strongly believed, and when we were together, he was a diabetic when I met him. I didn't know that when I met him. He hid it from me. He was a diabetic, and I accidentally saw the needles in the refrigerator, and I'm thinking, am I with a drug dealer? What a druggie? Are you on drugs? And I remember that day asking him. I had spent the night there, and I remember asking when I went downstairs that morning to get something to drink, and I look and I see the needles in the where the butter goes, and I was like, oh my God, I done met somebody that's on drugs. So later that day I had to break down that conversation and ask, what are those in the refrigerator? And he was like, oh, I'm a diabetic. I didn't know anything about that stuff, y'all. Even though my grandparents were diabetics, I didn't know anything about that stuff. He said that, oh, I'm a diabetic. I have to take insulin. At that moment, I was already involved in the relationship for a couple of months. I didn't know what diabetes was really about. I had to do my research on it, and I had to ask friends about it and talk to my girlfriends about it that were in Richmond, and I had to ask because I wasn't sure what it was really about. And that's when they told me, and my friends filled me in what it was about. And from what they told me, he's already taking insulin. He's in a bad state. He's in at the last level of it. Like, he's at the worst level of it. But by that time, we'd already been dating. I liked him. And when I don't know if I ever shared with you guys, but when he passed, he had already had one leg amputated that November. I think it was that November, and they were going to amputate the other leg in January. He passed on January the 12th. They did not amputate the other leg. He got up one morning. He had Malik that weekend. For some reason, I was late that day getting to my car. Getting to him, because we had to meet halfway, and I was late. I missed the exit. I don't know how in the world I missed the exit, and I was late getting to him. I guess it was God allowing him to spend more time with Malik, because he knew he was, God knew his time was up. And when I finally got to them, I think I was like 30 to 45 minutes late to an hour. And when I got there, I saw that he looked really bad. And my son came to me, Mama, I bought you a flower. My son gave me a flower, which is in my car. I don't know if I've ever showed it to y'all. I still have the flower. It was an artificial flower. And his grandmother said, yeah, he picked this while him and Melvin was outside, and he wanted to bring it to you. I kept the flower. Even though we weren't together, I kept the flower. It was a flower from my son that was the last time he was with his dad. Did I ever know it was going to happen? Nope. Did we have our ups and downs? Yep. Had I forgiven him? I did, actually, that June before he passed, because he had wrote me a letter, and I forgave him. I called him up and I told him I forgive you, but we can't be back together. He wanted to be back together, and I was like, no. He woke up one day, and the next morning after I saw him that Sunday, and collapsed in his mother's arms. And his brother called me. I was at work, and I lost it. I completely lost it. That the man I once loved, whom I had a child with, is now gone. Never did I think I would be the one that would be the single mother in that capacity. My son was 5 years old, I remember now. To answer your question, how did I handle it? At the beginning, it was hard. I beat myself up a lot, but I was glad I did forgive him before he passed. And I'm glad I had told him I forgave him before he passed. I beat myself up because I wish I could have been the one to get him to give his life to Christ before he passed. To turn his life over to God. I never not wanted my son to know his dad, even though his dad put me through a lot. He put me through, y'all. But I never wanted him to be gone, like away for good. I just wanted him to stop giving me problems. God knew what was best. So I created a little book for my son with all the pictures that I had of his dad and the time that me and his dad was together. And the time when he was holding Malik, when Malik was a baby, and all that stuff. I created a book for my son, and I told my son that whenever you want to think about your dad, or whenever you want to see your dad, open this book. If you feel like you're going to forget about him, open this book. And this is going to remind you of your dad. This is going to let you see your dad. And so it was hard. It was very hard because it was a person that I loved. Melvin, God knows I did things for him that I don't think I have done for any other man. I lived in sin with him. I let him live in my house, in my home, in my apartment, and I let him move in when he lost his place and drive my car, and I really gave my heart to him. I really loved him, and all I wanted was him to love me back the same way that I loved him, and he didn't until the very end. When he realized that I was a good woman, and he wrote that in the letter, how I was a good woman and how he was sorry. How he was sorry for cheating on me when we were together. Instead of writing him back, I called, and that's when I told him I forgive him. And that was the Father's Day of the year before he passed. The Father's Day of the year before he passed. He passed on January 12th, and his birthday was supposed to be January 23rd. I'm doing this video on January the 2nd and /3rd now. And so it's kind of this time of the year to talk. It's kind of the time of the year is emotional for me. And then on top of that, my granddad, it makes 5 years today that he passed on January 2nd. So I'm just like all over the place right now with that. But to answer your question, how did I handle losing my son's father? That's how I handled it. I never tried to erase my son's father out of my son's mind. I would bring up things sometimes of like funny things that would happen with me and his dad, and I would tell my son stories about it, and my son would just laugh. And I told my son about how me and his dad's first date, where his dad kept eating all popcorn, and I was like, can I have some? And so I told my son I tell him about some of the happy things, so that he can still know who his dad was. The last question of the day. This subscriber asked me, what was your experience growing up in a family Pentecostal church? Now, y'all, I have done a video on this, My subscriber that asked me this, you might have to go back to my video when I talked about how I grew up, because y'all was part of my therapy. I'm gonna touch on it a little bit though. I'm gonna touch on it a little bit for you. Look, my granddad was a pastor. Okay. My mom was the choir director, minister of music, what you would call her today. Today, you would call her minister of music. My dad was the head, well, at the time when I was born, he wasn't the head deacon. His dad was the head deacon. So my granddad of my dad was the head deacon. My mom's dad was the pastor. Okay. My daddy was a musician and the head deacon. After his dad passed, he became the head deacon. Well, no, after another man took over, my dad became head deacon later on in my teenage years. With that all said, y'all, your girl grew up in church all her life. All my life. Y'all, look, let me tell you something. Sundays, Sunday school, 11 o'clock service, 3:30 service, 7:30 service. That was the early years. Okay, that was Sunday, the early years. You want to know what it was when I was a teenager? It got worse. Okay, 8 o'clock a.m. service on Sunday. Sunday school, 11:30, 3:30, sometimes 4 something, 5 something, if somebody could squeeze one in. YMWC, what? YMWW? Yeah, YMWW, whatever, young people, women, something, YPWW, that's what, YPWW, in between that, and then 7:30 p.m. service. Y'all, Monday night choir rehearsal, Tuesday night Bible study, Wednesday night we going out to another church. You know, when you go to their church and they come to your church and you visit the all year one, y'all come to each other and one of them go to each other. Thursday night going to another church. Friday night family night at church. Saturday, guess what? That may be another rehearsal. Now, early years, we would have Mondays off, but we still had to go Tuesday through Saturday, Sunday to church. But then as we got older, they went on the chain and they added Mondays in there for something. Meetings or something, business meeting or something. Oh, Wednesdays was sometimes business meeting too, once a month. Y'all, when I tell you, I grew up in a foot stomping, tongue talking Church of God in Christ. I grew up Church of God in Christ, y'all. Coach. I was a Kojic girl. I was in the Kojic pageants. Went to nationals in the pageants. Went to state, district, national. I went to the nationals. And I was in, y'all, I was in the pageants, okay? I was in the youth pageants. You want to know what was my experience? All my experience was church, 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 church. So now that I limit, like I go, but I also have family time too, like I know how to balance it. I think the problem is that we didn't know how to balance it and we had nothing else to do, so all we did was go to church. You know what I'm saying? I don't wish that part of my life was ever not created, because that's the foundation of who I am, and that has made me the person I am, because that was the foundation that was built into me. So I was able to build that into my son. Now my son, and when he got a teenager and we switched churches, he was happy, but he didn't endure what I had to endure. We couldn't wear no pants. I couldn't wear no makeup. This is all before this is when I was growing up. No pants, no makeup, no ear. I done told you about no earrings. They called me Jezebel because I wore bracelets and necklaces and rings. Nothing, y'all. And that's why I think that I'm the way I am today, with piercings everywhere. And I just did this in my 40s, okay? I think that I'm the way that I am today because it was so strict that now I feel like I'm free. Now, we ain't have to wear the head cloth, but it was straight up strict. This nail polish, oh no, you better did that. Big earrings like this, oh child, you better not over here in holiness. But I don't take it away at all. I appreciate the foundation that my grandparents put into me. I appreciate what they put into us, because we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't. You know, I could be somewhere out here hoeing around and stuff, and not saying women in church weren't hoeing around, because there was some in there hoeing around too, but it allowed me to care about what people think about me, you know, care about my identity, you know, care about who that I represent God, you know, I gotta represent God. Pentecostal was very strict. Very strict. So that's how I grew up Pentecostal. I couldn't do a thing. They cared more about what you look like on the outside. They didn't want you to look like the world. Like right now, they consider me this, like this, all this. They consider this the world. I don't, on the other hand. So when I went to college and I went to Richmond, I started going to a Baptist church, and my grandmother had a fit, y'all. A fit. Grandma won't having it. So I have to do another whole video on that again. But yeah, my grandma had a fit when I started going to a Baptist church, because she didn't think that and that's one thing I don't like about the whole denomination stuff. One denomination feel like this denomination not going to heaven, and that denomination not going to heaven, and that one. Y'all, God ain't say none of that in the Bible. He said, all my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and seek my face and learn from their wicked ways. He didn't say black folk, y'all gotta or white folk, y'all gotta or Pentecostals, or y'all gonna make it, or Baptists, y'all the ones gonna make. God didn't say that. He said all my people. That means every last one of us, all of us, have the opportunity to go to heaven if we live right. I ain't gonna preach, y'all. I can feel that one in my spirit. I ain't gonna preach. I ain't gonna preach. But I just wanted to let you guys know that with all of that said, that's how I grew up Pentecostal. I made it. I made it. I made it. Oh, would I go back Pentecostal? I don't know, y'all. I like being non-denominational. I like not being in the category of, oh, Baptist, this, Catholic, that. Just let me go worship God and go home. That's all I want to do. And get the word imparted into me. With that said, I think I answered everybody's questions. If I didn't, I'll just have to do another video. But I think I got everybody's questions answered. Oh, maybe I'll get to do another one of these where you guys ask me some more questions. But I do appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I do apologize that it is a lengthy one, but it is called Getting to Know Me. And that's going to be the title of the video, is Getting to Know You, Getting to Know All About You. Yes, that's what the video is going to be called. But yeah, I do thank you, and I appreciate every one of you chiming in to watch this video. Don't forget to thumbs up the video. Don't forget to subscribe and share my videos with others so that they can be blessed as well and be the best you that you can be. I'll talk to you guys later.